Welcome, Lauri.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us this morning on the first ever Global Crime Stoppers Tweet-A-Thon. And I'm here in my office in Massachusetts, and I'm joined by several people. We can honestly say around the world because we have Australia here. So why don't we start with introducing everybody, and then we're going to start with the creator, the visionary of this event today. So why don't we start on our all the way to the left and welcome in Australia. Will you tell us who you are and
Yep. Good morning, everybody. So, Lauri, thank you. Bryan Roach. I'm the chairman of Crime Stoppers Australia, and I'm very pleased that this initiative has come forward to give us an opportunity to globally launch an opportunity to promote Crime Stoppers to a very, very large audience.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, Bryan. It's really great for you that you're here. It's 2-something you said in the morning, and I was just saying you wouldn't get me anywhere online at 2:15 in the morning. So really appreciate you being here. And let's go next to Jeanean. Will you tell us who you are? And then we'll come back to you.
My name is Jeanean Thomas. I'm a director with the Waterloo grant. Actually, are behind the global. I'd like to thank everybody that's participating today. We really appreciate the collaboration between programs.
Awesome. And I don't know if anybody else was having a hard time with her audio, but I was, so I don't know if there's something we can do about that. And next, I think we have John Lamb joining us from Oklahoma. John?
Hi, John Lamb, Chairman for Crime Stoppers USA. This is my first foray into this, so giving it a go. Just kind of bear with me.
Well, you're perfect so far, John. Absolutely perfect. So, welcome. And I think we have Scott Abrams next. Hi, Scott.
Well, good morning, Lauri. Thank you. I've participated in many of the other tweet-a-thons we've had, but this is our first ever Crime Stoppers tweet-a-thon, and thanking everyone for that, Jeanean and Lauri. I'm participating adjunct as part of Crime Stoppers USA. I'm the immediate past chairperson for Crime Stoppers USA, and have been involved with Crime Stoppers for over almost 34 years now. So I'm happy to do this. I'm, again, very hopeful that we can advance the Crime Stoppers name and awareness within the community. Even in my own community, I still get stopped when I talk with people and say, Crime Stoppers is still the best kept secret in our communities. We've got to get that word out. So I'm hoping this will impact that as well throughout all of our communities worldwide.
Thank you, Scott. We'll come back to you because I know you've got a lot to say on just why that's the case and you know why everybody should know what Crime Stoppers is. So we'll definitely be talking about that. So the next window we have a wall, and in that wall on each side are two guys that we can't see, but one of them's got to show his face here. We've got two guys, and one of them is Cal Miller and Scott Mills, and so we're going to have both of them introduce themselves and that lovely wall behind them.
Good morning, Cal Miller from Toronto, a longtime volunteer with Crime Stoppers, and it's great to see this technology being used to basically tell the world about the Crime Stoppers program. Years ago, this obviously wasn't a capability that we had, and we had to rely solely on the mainstream media. Today we can use all sorts of social media opportunities, and this just demonstrates how effective it is.
It's really fantastic to have you here, Cal, and I'm just a real big fan of yours and really admire the work you do. And I just want to let everybody know that you're going to be back here, just you and Jeanean, at noon for another hangout to talk about your books and your long involvement with Crime Stoppers. So I want everybody to come back to that. And we did have Megan. There's Megan. I didn't know she was still there, so can we go back to that window and have Megan say hi?
We're having some audio issues with Megan and Jeanean. The good thing is they're in a different room from where Cal and I are at, and I'm just going to ask Megan and Jeanean to come down to our room and so we can get some better audio on them because we can't hear what they're saying. So
they're so important because
Come on down. Come on down to where we're at, you guys, and we'll get you talking here. Just
Okay.
your setup going there, and we'll come on down here.
Great, because we definitely need to hear from Jeanean. You know, she's the visionary behind all of this, and so I'm really glad that that's happening. So in the meantime, let's go to Scott Abrams, and then while we're talking to Scott Abrams, we'll let Jeanean and Megan get seated there with Cal and Scott, and we'll go back to Jeanean. So Scott, will you just talk to us more about what you were referring to earlier about why you know, Crime Stoppers has been around for so long. It's international. I've been to the conferences. I mean, countries from all reaches of the globe have Crime Stoppers programs.
Sure.
Why is it not such a bigger, you know, why is it such a good secret?
Well, I think part of that revolves around our organizations being all volunteer boards, for example, and our ability to impart that knowledge is done on a volunteer basis. With that in mind, I mean, our primary jobs are somewhere else, and the focus isn't necessarily 100% on Crime Stoppers. So we do it more on a part-time basis. So, but we have people, we need to get those people involved that have that experience in marketing and bringing our message forward, because it is such an impactful message. I think a surprising statistic that I've been sharing around our organizations in the United States is, and this is pretty true for most of our organizations in the United States, is we have people to call in for tips. They want to provide information. They don't want the fear of reprisal of something coming back against them. That's why they want to call in their information anonymously. And with that, when we go back into our statistics for people that come back and actually get, because we offer rewards for our solved crimes, only 25 to 30% of the people call back for reward. So they're really just looking for an outlet to provide that information to our law enforcement officials without having the fear of a police officer coming to their house. They might be right across the street from the criminal. They don't want to see the police officer come to their house and then back out of their driveway and go across the street and then interview the criminal or the suspect in that case. So we need to get that information out. The anonymity is a very big part of our organizational structure and around the world. And I know Bryan will say the same thing. The anonymity is our integrity of the program, and we need to get that word out.
You know, I often cite a study. In fact, I use it in my own marketing that was done by a company called Accenture. It's a huge global company. Most people of it. And it isn't even their most recent study. It's the one from 2012, I think, where they found that 88% of the people they surveyed said they want to help police prevent and solve crime. They want to be involved. And another very large portion of them, and I forget the number, was that just what you said, they want to be anonymous. And so the more avenues we give people to help the police, you know, the more likely they're going to be willing and able to do that. And of course, Crime Stoppers was probably the original avenue, and many other ways now with social media. So
I think and recent events, unfortunately, that have evolved here in the United States with the two grand juries that came back with no indictments, and that just causes people to trust less of our law enforcement officials and those types of individuals. So, but if we can offer those people an opportunity to give their information in an anonymous fashion and not have that fear of the law enforcement and the criminals, I think that is a key issue going forward.
Well, it's certainly a better way to do it than burning your city down and things like that. So it looks like Jeanean and Megan are all set. So let's go to Jeanean. And Jeanean, you're the star of the day here. Because before we started, this is your fault.
Yeah.
But tell us where this came from. Like, why? Where did you think? When did you think this would be a good idea to work for Crime Stoppers?
Well, during the last Global Police Tweet-A-Thon, that was this past summer, led by yourself, I decided to register the Waterloo Crime Stoppers account and participate because I thought that we had valuable information to share, which we did. And I noticed that Crime Stoppers USA as well as Crime Stoppers Canada were also participating. And I thought to myself, well, this is a great platform, and why don't we kind of emulate this and do this ourselves? Because one of the key things that Crime Stoppers tries to stress is we really want to separate ourselves from the police so that people know that when they do talk to us, they're not speaking to the police. And although the police tweet-a-thon is it's great, Crime Stoppers really needed their own platform to kind of do the same thing and use that model to engage the public, I think.
Yeah, no, I think it's a brilliant idea. I mean, there's no reason it wouldn't work in, for many other groups as well. Now, your involvement with Crime Stoppers is as a civilian. You're not a cop. You're a volunteer in your community there in Waterloo. Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct. One of the common misconceptions I think the public has with Crime Stoppers is that we are led by a board of police. I actually got asked once if I was a retired police officer, and I was a little offended. But no, we are completely...
It offends me too when people think I'm a cop.
We are volunteer-based, and we're run on 100% community donations.
Right. Right. I think, there are a lot of police involvement in Crime Stoppers. Take Scott Mills, for example. He's a police officer in Toronto, and he was the liaison, and he's still so involved in Crime Stoppers. So I think you can kind of see where some of that confusion lies. But it's important for people to know that they text a tip. It doesn't go to the cops. It goes a circuitous route through several servers, and eventually gets, relayed to police. But why don't we talk about that? Who wants to kind of explain what happens if I either text a tip or I call anonymously? Where does that go? I'm thinking
crickets.
I can jump in and help you with that.
Okay, hand it over to the expert here.
Why don't you get in here, Scott?
Yeah. So.
I sit on my lap.
Yeah. I'm happy to explain that. As a police officer, I have to tell you that I worked about 14 years of my career, including in the Homicide Bureau, without really understanding what Crime Stoppers was. So having this explained is of utmost importance. So how it works is you can call in, you can text in, you can go online, or you can, in Toronto we have an app. And there's a little bit of controversy around apps about geolocations and identities and stuff like that. The reality here in Canada is that the anonymity protection is protected by case law of the Supreme Court since 1997. It's a case called R versus Liepert, and that case was actually adjudicated by a lawyer named Mr. Robert Gill from Victoria, British Columbia, who serves as a legal advisor to Canadian Crime Stoppers Association to this day. And because that anonymity protection is at the Supreme Court of Canada level, a number of the tips, especially in North America, are routed through Canada, so that they're anonymized in Canada, and we don't have any way to track the informant. And that's the cornerstone of Crime Stoppers. And there are many, many systems in place on Canadian soil to prevent that. And to put it in layman's terms, I can tell you that this is a true story. We did receive a Crime Stoppers tip about a potential terrorist attack at LAX airport, and this was when George Bush was the President of the United States. And the Crime Stoppers community people forwarded the tip to the appropriate law enforcement authorities in a timely way, and they were able to stop the terrorist attack on that plane. And of course, right up to the President's office, my understanding was trying to ascertain who the informant was on that. And it was tracked back through all of the authorities to a Crime Stoppers tip that had arrived on Canadian soil, which has the anonymity protection of the Supreme Court. So it's all anonymized, regardless of the means that it comes in. And because humans are involved in the system, so if somebody does make an error, or say a call taker tells somebody they shouldn't tell something or something like that, let's face it, it's reality here. If there is some form of knowing who that informant is, it's protected by informer privilege at the case law of the Supreme Court of Canada, and the authorities, including the President of the United States, has said that we can't give that information up. So it's a complicated system of routing for the phones, for text. A lot of it has to do with some great work done by Kevin Anderson in the past down in United States and Texas. We're very grateful for that, but there's also some major Canadian partners here in Ottawa that make it work. And one of the biggest questions I get asked frequently as a police officer and as a volunteer Crime Stoppers person is it really anonymous? How does it work? And I can tell you that there are checks and balances in place to make sure that it does work. And a lot of times when an anonymous tip gets to it could be that only one person knows that information. And so that anonymous tip gets into the hands of a police investigator, and they have to be very careful with how they deal with the information, because if it even gets out that they got that information, then that tipster's life could be in danger because there's only one person that actually knows it. So that's why using social media tools is such a passion for me, to both educate the public and police officers on how to do this. And you know, we recently had a Crime Stoppers board member down in Florida that was actually testifying about the anonymity of a tip, and I think you might, many people listening might remember this. He actually ate the tip while he was on the stand, and Richard Maston is his name, and he ate. Richard Masson from Miami-Dade Police on the stand in court ate the tip, which isn't something that Crime Stoppers programs recommends or the police recommends, but he was prepared to go to jail and be in contempt of court to protect the anonymity of a Crime Stoppers tips. And to me, that's a huge honor that somebody has the fortitude to protect that. Yeah,
no, that's incredible, Scott, and I thank you. I knew you were the guy to tell us about that. While we go, I'm going to go down to Australia and hear from. Here we go. Oh yeah, I want to go down to Australia for a second. But while we're doing that, Scott, if you would get either Megan or Cal Miller set up to talk to us next from your window, that would be outstanding. So it's Ralph, right? No, it's not Ralph. I'm sorry.
No, it's Bryan, Lauri.
Bryan. How are you,
That's
Bryan?
right.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
How are things going in Australia with Crime Stoppers with regard to the effectiveness, and you know, how would you describe it to us?
So we've had exceptional success with Crime Stoppers in Australia, and in the last few years in particular, we've seen significant increases in a whole range of outcomes, particularly calls, or what we call now contacts to Crime Stoppers, because we also concentrate not just on calls but online contact. So every jurisdiction in Australia has a website where people can go online and submit secure tips through a drop-down menu, so to speak. And by example, in the last year, we've had an 8% increase in the number of calls and contacts. So we average around about 250,000 calls or contacts each year across Australia. The quality of those calls or contacts is such that almost half of them are converted into information reports, and these are valuable intelligence reports that obviously, through the Crime Stoppers program, are eventually submitted to police, and allows the police to undertake a whole range of investigations quite successfully.
So you said roughly half. Could you give us an idea of what kinds of crimes is that? Just roughly of those half, of that half, are they small petty crimes? Are they major crimes? Is it terrorism? What do you?
No. So for us, Lauri, you know, we concentrate on major crimes. And for that matter, all crimes, of course, but we're talking about drugs mainly. So drug-related crime would represent almost 50% of the numbers of calls we get in. As a society in Australia, we don't tolerate drugs, and drugs lead to a whole range of other crimes: burglaries, thefts, violence against women, you name it. So the consequences of drugs, as you can appreciate, is very high. Obviously, we run campaigns, and everything that we do public campaigns nationally. We do public campaigns in every jurisdiction when we want information about a particular serious crime. So in the case of serious murders, when we have no evidence, we work with law enforcement to ensure that we can make concentrated appeals to the public for information, and we get real results. And the fact that we preserve the integrity of Crime Stoppers by offering anonymity, that's been critical to its success. I think you may or may not be aware that in recent years, Crime Stoppers in Australia has gone to a single brand, in other words, a single logo. So now we can use that logo to promote the brand across the whole of Australia. Know that anybody, anywhere in Australia, when they pick up the phone to ring one particular number, they recognise that it doesn't matter what time of the day, that they're going to get somebody at the other end to take that tip. So it's fundamental to the way we do business in Australia, and in every case, it's educating the cops, it's educating the police to know that when they're in front of the media, when they're calling for the public to come forward, what they say, the tagline is, if you have any information, call Crime Stoppers. And all calls to Crime Stoppers are anonymous. And that's always the case. Now, we're just entering our summer season now, our bushfire season, and arson is a significant problem for Australia. So every jurisdiction is now running bushfire arson campaigns. The fact we have a single brand has helped us now save money in our promotion, the advertising, our campaigning. And so we can leverage off all jurisdictions moving forward. And that, not only for arson, but every
right.
program.
I think that single brand thing is key, and I think that Canada and the U.S. could probably learn a lot from that. And while you're answering that, could you center yourself a little more in the camera so we can see your handsome face a little better, because you're kind of falling off the bottom of the screen. There you are.
There we go.
There, I like that better. We talk some more about that single brand, and is Crime Stoppers then less of a secret in Australia? Would you say that more of the public really knows of it and uses it?
They do, Lauri, and the critical thing, as I said, is that every single report on any single crime, when we want the public to come forward and give information, the tagline is always call Crime Stoppers. And it is a well-recognised brand, and it has, in effect, 98% brand recognition in Australia. Now, that's something that we can leverage, and it helps us in terms of our sponsorship, both nationally and in every jurisdiction now. That there are a lot of corporates who want to partner with Crime Stoppers, and that's always going to be an advantage. By having the one brand, we can work with those corporates, those organisations willing to sponsor us, and that funding, of course, for all not-for-profits, is used to good effect, to best effect.
Right.
So it's critical.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Bryan, because it makes a lot of sense to me. And perhaps we can get John Lamb to comment on some of that, as far as the U.S. and where we are with doing some of that type of marketing in a second. But first, I see Megan looks like she's ready to talk to us. Now, Megan, my friend Megan, is a civilian with the Corporate Communications Office of Toronto Police. But my understanding, Megan, is you are also a board member of the Ontario Association of Crime Stoppers. Is that correct?
That's right, Lauri. So when Crime Stoppers here at the Toronto Police Service fell under corporate communications, I also was able to take on the Toronto Police liaison role on the board of the Ontario Association of Crime Stoppers, which is a great fit for me. Certainly one of the things that the Ontario Association of Crime Stoppers is looking to do is improve and enhance the way it communicates, not just with its partners and the public, but with all of the programs across Ontario as well. So today is actually sort of the maiden voyage for the Ontario Association of Crime Stoppers Twitter account. I thought it was a great idea to sort of launch that during this global Tweet-A-Thon, and we'll get up and running in social media, and we're going to start looking at doing some other things too that will, as I said, expand the way the OACS has been communicating with all of its programs and the public.
You're a great marketer and PR thinker. What do you think of is there how much would we benefit? Would the whole Crime Stoppers across Canada, Crime Stoppers across the U.S. benefit if the marketing were a little more cohesive?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, is what we're learning here today is for everybody who's on this Google Hangout, everybody is sending the exact same message about Crime Stoppers.
Right.
Essentially, it works the same way everywhere in the world, and everybody's program is looking to achieve the exact same goals. And I think that, if together we can send that cohesive message out to the public, then it doesn't matter where they have a local Crime Stoppers program, they're going to know exactly what Crime Stoppers can do for them and what they can do for their community by using Crime Stoppers, and I think that's really important.
Thank you, Megan. John Lamb, what do you think about all this, and what have you got to tell us about your involvement and your history with Crime Stoppers?
Just making sure I wasn't muted. Okay. All right. Well, basically, Crime Stoppers USA, nationally, we're taking in a little over 1.5 million tips per year. That is an extremely conservative number. Getting our programs to report all their statistics has been a challenge since day one. We last year went in and started pulling all the data out on the number of homicides. For instance, on the number of tips we take, just like Bryan down in Australia, it's across the board. We're already over 8,000 homicides solved from Crime Stoppers USA tips. A lot of the tips we're getting, as I said, are completely across the board. They're anywhere from drug tips to a lot of the stuff we're dealing with right now are border issues, oil and gas theft along the U.S.-Mexican border, human trafficking cases, drug cases, dealing with the Mexican drug cartel here in the United States and down in Mexico. I mean, all the way up to Canada. So we're dealing with that. We're also, dealing with the school shooting problem we've got here in the United States. And Scott and myself and a couple of our other board members have been up to Washington, D.C. more times than I care to think about this year, talking with legislators and people in Homeland Security and some other federal agencies about the school shooting issue, what we can do. We're actually working on some stuff on that right now, which I can't go into yet. But it's been across the board. I mean, one of the things is we've also stopped national security incidents from happening, which you don't see in the paper anywhere. We're anonymous. But I will say that in all of our discussions we've had with anybody from law enforcement, whether local, state, federal, we are determined that they understand that everything we are going to do with our informants are anonymous, period. And it will be that way or they won't be working with us. And so far, especially on the federal level, they've really come around to that. They'd rather have some information about, possible school shooting than nothing at all.
Right.
But I can say, for instance, in my little town of 35,000, the first year we had Crime Stoppers in the school here, we stopped 2 school shootings.
That's incredible. And of course like you said, we don't always hear about that.
Well, you don't hear about the ones we've stopped. You
Right.
only hear about the ones that happen.
Right.
And so we're getting ready to do a survey for all our programs to find out how many that they've stopped that they know of, and get that information, because when we go talk to them in Washington, D.C., that has a huge impact with them, especially with the congressmen and the senators we've been dealing with. And we've received really good acceptance on both sides of the aisle, both the Democrats and the Republicans. Scott, wouldn't you say that that's pretty much the case on our visits down there? You're muted.
Yes, I was trying to get that off before you actually pointed the finger at me. We're finding great acceptance, and particularly with the schools, when you can deal with the youth and touch on them as well, and how we can provide the success and safety of our students to help in the educational and learning environment, they're all for that. And even in my own community, where we just implemented a Scholastic Crime Stoppers program, it's been a huge success as well. And it's very easygoing when you can talk about our youth and what's important to them, and having a learning environment that is safe, that they don't have a fear in going to school. We've heard, and as we were putting it in, we heard so many stories from parents and students that they did fear going to school. They hid out, and one child said they ate their lunch in the bathroom and closed the door just because they didn't want to go to the lunchroom because they felt the fear of just having lunch in the lunchroom. So it's gone a long way to helping create a more safe environment for our schools.
Fantastic. Scott, we can come back to you one more time if you'd like to give you the last word, but I want to give Cal a chance to chime in here. I know we're going to hear back from you at noon, Cal, with you and Jeanean together. But I certainly want to have an opportunity to talk with you now too, and tell us, what has been your involvement with Crime Stoppers. And I know you work really hard right now writing and getting some stories out there. So what are you working on?
Well, I'm basically working on another book related to Crime Stoppers, and that's the history of Crime Stoppers with Greg McAleese, the founder. That probably will be published in August of next year. But I would just like to comment on some of the topics that have been discussed here regarding the crime that Crime Stoppers actually resolves. And I think when you look at Crime Stoppers, it really covers a myriad of crimes ranging from bicycle thefts to homicides. And really, the majority of people are not impacted by homicide, but they're impacted by those nuisance crimes. And Crime Stoppers does make an absolute effort to develop safe communities. And I think that's an important factor of Crime Stoppers in any communities where it operates, to make sure that the safety and security of the people is paramount. And Crime Stoppers does an excellent job. It was initiated way back in 1976 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, to resolve a homicide. And it proved so effective that the department accepted it as a branch of the police department, and was very instrumental in solving all sorts of crime. But what was very interesting, when the Crime Stoppers line originated, the very first call wasn't for the homicides itself that they were trying to solve, but a sexual assault on a number of women, a serial rapist. And they were able to resolve that case by setting up what eventually became the Crime Stoppers program to solve a homicide. And that was also resolved. And that the program Crime Stoppers developed basically across the United States as a result of the efforts in Albuquerque, expanded into Canada, and is now a worldwide organization. And the statistics are absolutely phenomenal. The 8,000 plus homicides that have been solved in the United States. The global figure for basically the seizure of drugs and recovery of stolen property is over $10 billion. A billion. And for the cost of the few rewards that Crime Stoppers pays, those are absolutely phenomenal statistics that people have to recognize. And I think Crime Stoppers has become an organization that law enforcement can't do without. It's great to see the expansion on how Crime Stoppers is protecting schools. It was Crime Stoppers that started scholastic programs. We've been at the forefront of helping basically solve crime from the day we started, and I think that's a really important message.
Absolutely. And I think, that's a good point you make with all the pressures that are on law enforcement. Excuse me. Right now, they cannot afford to do without citizen involvement, citizen help. Now, I hope all of you folks will be tweeting all day, and some of those statistics, please be tweeting those, because people need to know that 8,000 homicides, that's incredible. Now, Cal, you tweet as what? Now, you've got a couple of Twitter accounts, right?
Yeah, basically Crime Stopper Books is the one that I've been using today, but they also Find My Killer, which is Unsolved Murders, and the other Missing Find Me. And those are the three accounts that I'm using today to tweet out Crime Stopper information.
Well, you are so full of information. I really hope that we see a lot of tweets from you. Scott Abrams, it's time to wrap it up. Do you want to have the last word, or is any of the rest of you really have something you want to make sure we say as we close?
Well, I can start, Lauri, and I wanted to close from some of the information we've been sharing around the world and here in the United States. And one of the questions that always come is what's the value of Crime Stoppers? And we talked about the effectiveness of it a little bit. And what I've been trying to do is show the value and relevance of a Crime Stoppers organization in a community. And so, again, I'm a CPA, so I like statistics. And when I look at some of the statistics around the United States, and then I shared that with our local law enforcement agency, and I've gone to other Crime Stoppers organizations on a state basis or local basis recently about this information. And what came up to is we had a recent law enforcement recognition gathering here in my local community. And I just posed a question to the police chief, and he was fairly new at the time. And I said, from when you have a case that comes in, and it's solved. From start to finish, what's the cost of solving that case? And we him and hawed, and we came up with what I considered a conservative figure. And I figured if you took your costs and investigation, everything divided by the number of solved cases, let's say $10,000. And I think that's pretty conservative. And then I posed the other side of him. Well, if we have a Crime Stoppers tip that comes in, and we pay a reward of $150, there's no other costs involved. Those are all donated funds. They're not city budget tax items at all, but $150 on the average to solve that case around the United States. There's the value there. Now I understand there's additional investigative time and things that has to be done by the law enforcement agency to get to the charging stage, but that's a significant step forward in having no information to getting some information for only $150. So I pose that as a value statement to all of our Crime Stoppers organizations and sharing that with their law enforcement partners of how Crime Stoppers can be very effective in your community and being able to help reduce costs. So I share that as sort of a value and relevance statement.
I think it's brilliant, and I think when you layer on top of that the opportunities that both law enforcement and Crime Stoppers have right now with social media to get the word out about all of that, the power of all of it together is really incredible.
Yes, thank you.
I really want to thank all of you. This has been a lot of fun and very informative, and hopefully we'll get a few folks up to speed on Crime Stoppers, and maybe we'll get a few more Crime Stoppers, and we'll just grow this whole thing. So thank you again. And,
just before we sign off here, I'd like to once again thank everybody that's participated in this Hangout on Air and in the Global Tweet-A-Thon as a whole. And I just want to remind everybody that we're going to be back at 12 p.m. Eastern to talk more with Cal about his books and his involvement with Crime Stoppers and some cold cases we're going to touch on too. So we'll hope to see you then.
Awesome, Jeanean. Thanks so much. I should have come back to you and reminded everybody about that. So we'll all be watching at noon Eastern Time. Jeanean will be interviewing Cal. All right. Are we good to go, guys?
Great. Thank you.